You picture a wholesome veterinary clinic. Dogs are wagging their tails, and there is a steady stream of grateful pet owners walking through the door, ready to spend literally anything to keep their beloved animals healthy. You watch them pay $150 for a quick 15-minute checkup, and you do the math in your head. Between the multiple exam rooms and the packed schedule, it looks like the ultimate bulletproof, recession-resistant business. Behind the exam room door, the business operates as a highly consolidated, capital-intensive medical facility. That adorable facade hides a fragile economic model. In reality, a veterinary practice constantly teeters on the edge of debt, strained by the relentless pressure of specialized labor costs and an industry being silently swallowed by private equity. Buying your way into this industry requires a staggering amount of upfront capital. Building a modern veterinary clinic means constructing a miniature, fully functioning hospital, complete with surgical suites, X-ray rooms lined with lead shielding, and isolation wards for contagious animals. Consider the HVAC system. Even a modest commercial gym has to spend tens of thousands of dollars to legally pump fresh air into a room full of sweating people. A veterinary clinic has to scale that invisible infrastructure even further, installing specialized medical-grade ventilation engineered to handle animal odors, dander, and airborne pathogens. On top of the physical build-out, you face a massive regulatory barrier. You must secure state permits, obtain federal registrations with the DEA to legally handle controlled substances, and acquire specialized biohazard waste disposal permits, all while navigating radiation safety licensing for your imaging equipment. This process closely mirrors the regulatory friction of starting a community bank. You have to spend millions of dollars and wait months or sometimes years simply to obtain permission to operate from state and federal regulators. Before you ever treat a single animal, and long before you collect a single dollar of revenue, the independent owner is already buried under a massive structural and regulatory footprint. So you survive the build-out, pass your inspections, and open the doors. Naturally, you assume the real wealth is generated when you charge a family $100 for a basic physical exam. To understand why that is false, look at this flowchart breaking down the economics of a typical gas station. The actual fuel brings in massive top-line revenue, but it is a brutally thin margin product designed primarily to pull drivers onto the property. More than 60% of the net profit actually comes from the convenience items inside the store, like a cup of brewed coffee that carries an astonishing 90% gross margin. A veterinary clinic operates on this exact principle. The basic checkup is your fuel. It's the low-margin lure paying for your receptionist, electricity, and liability insurance. The checkup itself barely covers the cost of keeping the lights on. It is just the entry point required to pull the pet into the building and turn their owner into a captive audience for your actual profit centers. Your survival relies entirely on your back-end operations. Similar to a car dealership making a tiny front-end margin on the car itself, but generating extreme wealth in the finance office and the high-margin service bays, a veterinary clinic makes its real money on pharmacy markups, on surgical procedures, and on in-house diagnostics. When you run a blood test, an ultrasound, or a digital X-ray, the incremental cost to the clinic is virtually zero once the physical machine is paid off. Because of this, those diagnostic services carry massive, near-pure profit margins. You also rely heavily on a retail pharmacy mechanic. By offering basic generic drugs or vaccines as a low-margin pull, you get customers into the lobby, where you can sell them highly profitable proprietary pet food and expensive surgical add-ons directly from your desk. But generating that profit requires navigating a severe labor trap. You are legally required to carry the massive fixed cost of a licensed doctor of veterinary medicine on site at all times. You cannot operate without one, and a nationwide professional shortage is driving those salaries up dramatically. At the same time, your specialized support staff, the veterinary technicians and assistants, suffer from massive burnout. The turnover rate regularly hits 40%, a metric identical to the high-volume retail grocery industry. Every time an assistant leaves, you pay a premium to recruit, hire, and retrain a replacement in a highly competitive market. This chart illustrates the constant threat of the volatility trap. Your fixed costs, the mortgage on the building, the debt service on those digital X-ray machines, and those high professional salaries stay perfectly flat regardless of patient volume. If a tight economy causes pet owners to stretch out the time between checkups, your variable revenue plummets, but your fixed costs remain entirely intact. A single slow month can instantly turn a profitable practice into a cash-burning liability. To survive, this highly fragile machine requires you to constantly push those massive diagnostic markups just to outpace your crushing fixed labor costs and high staff turnover. Operating in an environment defined by extreme upfront capital, immovable fixed costs, and persistent labor shortages makes it incredibly difficult for an independent owner to survive alone. This brutal operational reality is why private equity firms have spent the last few years aggressively sweeping across the country, targeting and buying out independent veterinary practices. This network diagram shows exactly how corporate consolidation works. By grouping dozens of independent clinics together under one corporate banner, private equity firms can dissolve all those individual back offices. They route everything into a single centralized hub for HR, accounting, and marketing. This drastically cuts down the administrative overhead that a single owner would be forced to absorb. It also gives the corporate entity immense leverage to negotiate cheaper software fees, better equipment leases, and highly favorable wholesale pharmaceutical supply contracts. The romanticized era of the standalone neighborhood doctor, operating an independent community practice, is rapidly disappearing, replaced by hyper-efficient corporate portfolios. Owning a clinic today means managing an operationally intense medical and hospitality hybrid, relying entirely on 90% margin diagnostic tests and surgical add-ons to feed a corporate cash machine.